All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. Crossy, how are you?
Shrums, how are you going, mate?
Yeah, good. It's coming up to end of, by the time this drops, it might be just on financial year, not sure. But we're in that period now, June, July. In the real estate world, it seems like a quick little pause leading into the second half of the financial year, a new financial year. So things are really gearing up professionally for us, but across the board, there's a lot going on, isn't there?
Mate, there is, and particularly in the economy at the moment, a lot of talk about cost of living and this energy crisis that we're living in.
That's right,
it's wild. And of course, this interest rate environment, we saw last week the States go bang with 0.75 basis points to their economy over there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here with the RBA if they sort of follow suit. There's talk of really having really hard increases quickly to try to, soften that inflation piece that's obviously getting a little bit out of hand. So that's having some flow-on effects and some little headwinds with the property game, which we'll talk about in the coming weeks ahead. But good time of year, mate, I reckon. Good time of year just to reflect and gear up for the next fin year.
Oh, isn't it? It's headlines after headlines, hey? That's the media's job. Love it.
They love it. They seem to chase you for a headline. They
love a headline. Jeez, hit me up. What's the headline? I'll give them the one-liner. Boom.
Dang.
We make a story. Yeah. So I always say, we've done it before. Always be careful of what you read, see, and hear. At the end of the day, the media outlets are there to get clicks and get reads. Always stay narrow focus on your goal. And mate, just quickly on the commercial side of things, that ep was a cracker. We had some good feedback on the boys from Harcourt's Coastal Commercial Department on all things commercial property.
Yeah, thanks to Lockie and Jared and the boys for coming in last week. That was outstanding. And a bit of feedback we had was, people had never really thought too much about commercial, given that it's probably not a huge sector on the Gold Coast for where the coast is at the moment in its sort of cycle or, its place in the property market compared to, say, your Sydney and Melbourne's. But, a couple of things the boys said last week certainly opened up my thinking to a couple of different things 100%. That I know a couple of people I spoke to during the week sort of said the same. And even for young agents, which you may have spoken to in that week as well around, they're in the resi space and maybe thinking, maybe that commercial sector is not a bad one to look at. So you had some inquiry on that, didn't you?
Heaps, yeah, especially from investors. Obviously, with the interest rate environment, people are gearing up. People are looking at different options to use with their lending. So really good app if you're into the commercial side of things, whether you're an agent or a investor looking to diversify potentially. Really good episode, that one. So a lot of knowledge. And speaking of knowledge, mate, we're going to dive deep. We're going to get a ton of knowledge, I reckon, out of today's app. I've been really excited around this one. So today's app, this guy, his business and his brand, I feel since COVID especially, has just gone boomed, and we were going to get an insight into the business model and the brains behind it, but an epic story as well. So I go to some open homes or new listings, and an agent will you've made it when an agent will sell the property saying, it's a so-and-so design home. Yes. That's got to be the tag, isn't it, that you made it as a designer. So we're really fortunate. We've got Jayson Pate from Jayson Pate Design. You'd be under a rock if you haven't seen some of his stuff. And it's funny, social media, like he's blown up on there as well. Blown up. So if you're looking for inspo, this guy's setting the mark. So Jayson Pate, mate, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, boys.
Mate, I guess the first thing is, mate, what do you think of that when you're getting agents saying, mate, this is a Jayson Pate Design home as the headline? Is that sort of is that when you've made it as a designer?
I don't know about ever actually making it, but it is pretty cool. I do remember the first time it probably happened, and I think it happens a whole lot more these days. So it's always nice to be known.
I was going to ask you, have you ever walked into an open home and the agent says, "Oh, you'll love this. This is a Jayson Pate Design."
No,
so that happens to be me.
It would be pretty cool, but no, I haven't. Maybe one day.
Because I know, and we'll talk about it, you're a bloke that historically likes to sort of fly under the radar. You're a very humble sort of guy. So I just thought it'd be interesting to see if that actually did happen.
Yeah, no, it's a funny one. Like obviously, you got to do what you need to do to sell a property, right? And I find whoever the designer, architect, if it's a builder, it's becoming really more prevalent that people are pitching that now, because it's different. You know, it's not your cookie cutter. People are looking for character or something different, a bit edgy, especially in your blue chip markets around Australia, I find. So I guess firstly, Jayson, we'll talk around the whole where we're at now, but we'd love to know like where you sort of started. Like, how'd you get into this space? Were you always into it? Like, what was the past life like?
Yeah, so I suppose the start of the design business goes back 15 years now.
Oh, wow.
I studied at TAFE, Gold Coast TAFE.
Okay.
Did building in, I think at the time it was called architectural technology. I think it's a building design course these days. Yeah, okay. 2-year course, and then went and started working for an architect in Surfers, just as a draftsperson for a few years, before heading out on my own into the sort of resi space.
So you didn't do like a university sort of degree, or?
I chose not to go down the uni path. I didn't love study as a kid. Was more into my sports than anything.
Yeah.
And 6 years at uni just really didn't excite me much. It's funny because these days I now employ people who come through that uni course, and through the TAFE course, and you get similar sort of skill sets, but then vastly different in some ways as well.
Well, you're in good company here, like focusing on sport and not too pumped about study. I'm hearing you. I can talk for Srams as well on that front.
Mate.
But what about just prior to that, Jay? So correct me if I'm wrong, you're from Melbourne?
From Melbourne originally.
And played a bit of footy down there?
Yeah, grew up loving Aussie rules, as you do and as you have to.
Oh, they love it, eh?
Yeah,
jeez.
When you grow up in Victoria, there's you're either in or you're out.
Yeah.
And 95% of kids play football down there, or what we call football.
Yep.
It's moved up here when I was 15, and then started playing up at the Southport Sharks from there.
The Sharks, they're a successful club, aren't they? So how were your times at the Sharks? Just take us through how your times at the Sharks, enjoyable, but also how different did you find AFL on the Gold Coast compared to like an AFL mad city like Melbourne?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy to move up at that time. The Brisbane Lions were around, but they hadn't had their sort of golden years as yet. It was a completely different sort of landscape in that football world. I remember coming up and the only football at school was a nine-a-side game, which was just so foreign to me, and probably was kicking and screaming to go back home at that stage. But then falling into sort of footy at the Sharks was what I needed.
Yeah.
At sort of those, at that early age, and kept me on the path to trying to sort of play at the highest level.
Yeah.
Didn't sort of make it too far past the Sharks, but we had plenty of success there, and I think it really set me on a path just in life to sort of chase success, and we had plenty of it there, and I probably always wanted that then to sort of transfer into business, and it was always chasing success that drove me in business more than any financial reward or anything like that.
It's funny when we always talk about it, like we're obviously all from a league background, and mate, we always talk around there should be more around helping athletes transition into business, I think, because obviously knowing in business, mate, it's the exact same. It's literally there's teamwork, discipline, consistency,
daily habits,
resilient. You get knocked out, you have to get back up, kind of thing. I think athlete or sports people learning with different people as well. I always find actually, like anyone who's been in team sport quite a while, like they're pretty good in tune with emotional IQ. Like they can get along with this person, get along with that person, and mate, it would have been the same in an AFL. Like the locker rooms, you got a clown here, you got someone quiet here, you got it's
100%. I think team sport, teaches just such good values from that early age. So
huge.
I'm a big advocate for it.
Yeah.
And do you reckon, they talk about, you're often a reflection of the 5 people that you hang around as far as successful people or whatever. Like, as you said, Jayson, before, like being in a successful Southport Sharks side, I know you said like that was good, but like how important was that for you to take you and leapfrog you into your business?
It was huge, and the network that you create in these team sort of sport environments, it really was. It's even sort of the catalyst for the business being called Jayson Pate Design, I guess. Starting from nothing, it was really leaning on networks of people I played football with, people I went to school with, people that I'd worked with, was really the sort of starting point to bring some people in through the business to have what's started as really small renovation design done. And I still remember the very first new home I got to design was in Broadbeach Waters, was for an old football coach. So, you know, without that home, would I still be just doing small renovations for, you know, whoever around the streets? Maybe not. But you just wouldn't know. But without the team sport, I wouldn't have had that football coach who wouldn't have given me the opportunity to design his home. You know, it just shows those sliding doors kind of things. But
isn't it?
Well, and you know, Srams is a great example of that, using the profile he had in rugby league. But it's one thing to have a profile and to have it at your fingertips, but it's another thing to go and execute upon it. You know, I've seen heaps of guys that, with all due respect to Srams, have probably got a higher profile or had a higher profile, but they haven't done anything like what Matt's been able to do in business, because they just haven't had the right sort of mental fortitude or potentially the get up and go in them, like some of them have.
It's a really good story there as well. Just quickly, obviously we're looking where the business is now, but the business starts everywhere, right? You got to find your first client and that. Could you take us back to, so you sort of, did you set up the business straight away? You obviously worked under that architect first. When did you decide, all right, I'm going to set up my own thing?
It was actually GFC time. So GFC time, I was almost pushed out of, that was only a very small architecture firm, and it was almost the last in, first out type sort of setup. I was lucky enough to be doing a lot of private work on the side of that job at the time, and probably was at the point where, without knowing it, had more than enough to actually start my own business. But it's that leap of faith that, you know, not a lot of people are willing to take. So the gentle nudge I probably got pushed me into that space, and, you know, the rest is history kind of thing.
That's so interesting, isn't it? We've had that theme on our podcast almost weekly with our guests, you know, and a couple that you know well, Jace, is Matt and Emma, you know, the Render X, Ruin X, Project X guys. Like Matt talks about moving up, you know, for some work. But yeah, so sliding door moments, isn't it, where potentially you weren't thinking that you were going to do that, but it's the universe has got a funny way of sort of showing you which path to go down. And Srams has got a good quote about the doors.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Toss it up, mate. Come on.
Mate, it's life will always open up doors. It's our job to walk through them, and life will close the ones we're not meant to continue to walk through. But too many people get the doors open, but they won't jump into any of them, you know?
Yeah, and that's, you know, was I willing to walk through the door? Did you get that little nudge through the door? Probably got nudged that way.
Yeah.
But, you know, just was meant to be, I guess.
It's meant to be, yeah. And, mate, I heard a little story on our research of it. You were involved in the Bali Bombing, were you?
We were,
yeah. What year was that again? What was
2002. So we're coming up 20 years this year, which gives me tingles to even think that.
So were you on a footy trip, or were you?
Yeah, Southport Sharks footy trip.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And still live with the guilt to this day that I was the organiser of the footy trip, and we probably could have gone anywhere in Australia. We literally never went overseas for these footy trips.
Yeah.
So be it this 1 year we decided to, and unfortunately, I think 9 of us went over and 8 of us came back.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, wow.
That's horrific.
Yeah.
20 years.
So how old would you have been there?
Well, 21.
21, yeah.
And I was actually one of the older guys. It was a real young guys footy trip that year. Like, you know, we were playing footy with 30-year-olds. It just so happened that as it sort of came about, the guys who were signing up to go on the footy trip that year were really, you know, my age, if not younger. And it was, it just all blew up in our faces.
Yeah.
Can I ask, mate? I'm sorry to hear that. That's so awful. How did that affect you? Like, obviously in the short term, directly following that, did you go and play footy again the following year? And if so, did the remaining boys sort of play and sort of bandy together? Because obviously there's a bit of brotherhood that would form, I'm assuming, from that. How was the next sort of short term for you, say the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, it's that definitely formed. There was the guys who were in the bombings all got back to football the next year. One was injured a little bit more physically than others. He had a severed Achilles. Jeez. So obviously that was sort of, I think, about a 12-month injury. So he might have missed that whole season actually, and maybe came back the following. But probably never the same again as well. Like, it's a pretty serious injury for a footballer.
Massive.
Others had superficial kind of injuries. One actually almost escaped unharmed. Burst eardrums. He actually saved my life over there. I severed an artery in my back. It was without him, I wouldn't be here today.
Wow.
He pretty much held my back together until emergency surgery was done.
Incredible.
Yes.
Then, you know, and there was varying levels of injury, you know, outside of that. We've all got sort of ongoing issues with our eardrums from being sort of burst in the bomb. But yeah, just a crazy time in my life. The following 12 months, it was interesting. There was a lot of really strong bonds formed, but then just so much media coverage about it afterwards sort of
massive,
almost created fractures through the club as well.
Really?
Yeah, wow.
And that's not only our club, like the Coogee Dolphins were involved, and quite a... It's actually crazy that at the time the Geelong Footy Club was over there, the North Melbourne Footy Club were over there. It's crazy that some of those AFL sides just weren't in that club at that time. Because, you know, rewind 24 hours, they were.
Wow.
So, you know, it could have been devastating to the AFL had those clubs have been there. And it's devastating enough with, you know, call it everyday people.
Yep.
But the impact, had those clubs have been there, would have, you know, been heightened even further.
Totally. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, you're right, because such high profile media around it anyway. You throw in the mix some guys that are really well known, and I actually, the Byron Bay Red Devils. I grew up in Byron Bay, and they were over there at the time as well. Yeah, there was so many footy trips there at the time, wasn't there? And
it's October. It's essentially footy trip season, and Bali really was becoming that destination if you wanted to just get overseas. It was cheap enough, accessible enough, and footy trips at the time, you didn't want too many rules to apply. It was sort of almost the perfect destination for it. And I guess the sort of guys plotting, against sort of the Western way of life saw that, and executed what they would have seen or what they were trying to do quite well, I guess.
It's an amazing background. So I love background stories as well, because people forget. People always see you on the surface what's happened, but a lot of people go through different things in life, right? And I think things like that are really inspiring for people, right? Because some people might just hold, like an experience like that could have stopped. I'm sure people did, like whatever dreams, aspirations they had, things like that would just press pause on a lot of things and never, take action on whatever it is.
Big time. And that's what I want to ask Jayson was, mate, how did that affect you from the point of view of like your personality type? Did you sort of go into your shell? Did you become a little bit removed from your personality that you were before, or did it change in any way?
I think I did. I changed profession afterwards. Change of profession was probably on the cards anyway, but at the time I was actually working the bar at Southport Sharks. Coming back and through my recovery period was probably the better part of like a 12 weeks from the bombings to actually be right enough to even consider going back to work. But to think of going back to work behind a bar in a public setting where people really could, even just the question of how are you, or,
could set you off.
Yeah, it didn't sit all that well with me, not so much from friends and family, but it was just more strangers that you didn't really want to have to regurgitate the story to.
Yep.
And I felt like that might come up more than I wanted. Yep. So I actually chose to change careers at the time. I went into personal training, did that for a couple of years while I finished some study. And then obviously into something that was that little bit more of a quieter lifestyle of going into that design world and sitting behind a computer all day.
Yeah, far out. And then, so you're in the design world now. You've pressed forward. Jayson Pate Design set up? Was it just you at the start, or did you have a team? Or
it's funny, at the architects where I worked at the time, it was myself and one other drafty named Reese Kyle. He and I went close to going out in a partnership at the time. We're now both out in our own and both sort of kicking goals with our own own businesses. So it very well could have been a partnership. I think we'd both agree that we're happy that we've found our own way. But yeah, so just
went out on your own.
Yeah, just on my own. And I probably worked by myself for a couple of years before bringing staff on. So it was really just servicing that network of people that I'd built over many years being on the coast. And looking back, moving up when I was 15 and not 18 probably even helped that little bit, because you create that school network before you start making the football network, the work network. So I think it just allowed me to have sort of, or the spider web was just that little bit sort of larger before going out on my own.
And mate, have you always been like a creative type? Even when you're at school and whatever, have you always had your own ideas, or have you sort of drawn inspiration from a number of different trends over the years?
I was just going to say that. Hey, like Jayson seems like I didn't know you played footy, and he's kind of knockabout bloke. But all the designers I've met are creatives. They're a bit different. A lot of them, you know.
I guess school days, sport was everything to me.
Yeah.
But looking back at what I studied, art and graphics, which is sort of essentially a technical drawing, were still sort of high priorities. So it's probably a bit of a weird mix in some ways, because a lot of my sporting mates had no.
I could imagine.
No interest in
interest in
I could imagine.
or architecture.
It's not a footy chat, eh? You don't chat in the locker room, say what are you drawing at?
Exactly. What's the latest trend?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so how does it? You're getting clients, right? And I guess for my knowledge, what's the difference between like design, architect? Like, is there a difference? Like
in the residential space, to me, it's a piece of paper. I think early days, when people were really searching for high-end design, and this probably goes back 10 years, I think architects were known as people who did better design.
Yep.
And the regular punter was, I think that was their mindset, that if they wanted the highest of end design, they had to go to an architect.
Yeah.
I think over the last decade, that sort of gap's been shortened a lot by people like myself and Reese and a whole world of others who were TAFE qualified, and I'm talking resi space, not commercial space, but resi space, that gap's really been narrowed. And I believe today people search for a portfolio rather than that piece 100%. Of paper.
Agreed.
So
definitely,
I would get asked once a year whether I'm an architect or a building designer, and maybe have someone who might not want to use me because of that fact. But really, I think it's your work that speaks for itself. And I guarantee all my clients now come to me for what we've done in the past or what we will do in the future more than anything. Yeah,
that's so true. I know a bloke in Byron Bay that he was a school teacher, he was a hairdresser, he was a chippy, he's a builder, but now he's doing a lot of design work. And it basically started off him designing a bit of a barn style place up at Newry Bar actually. Yeah. And people would come to it and go, who designed this? And he was like, I did. And then, do you mind having a look at something for us? Thinking that he was an architect or a designer. He wasn't. He just had a few good ideas. Yeah. And it's kind of slowly morphed into him being a bit of I won't say a go-to, but people in the Shire down at Byron will go, well, let's get this guy to have a look at it, And is that sort of what you're saying there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a real snowball effect. It's that one job that people start to know that turns into 3 more. And the 3 more turn into 9 more, and you're off and running. And Justin Humphrey, architect on the coast here, he designed a particular place called the Cove House. It went viral and kind of won national awards. Justin, off the back of that, has built better and better projects coming along. So it shows, I think. And Justin worked for Paul Ullman, who's had an architecture company here for a million years. And it'd be interesting to hear his story of how easy it was for him to jump out and start himself. But, that starting himself and looking back and doing that one particular project has really, catapulted him into a whole lot of jobs. I guess it's probably a good story for anyone out there who's sitting behind a computer working for someone. Can you do it? Can you have your own business? And maybe it only takes that one particular client. I know I've got one particular staff member who used to work for me, who's absolutely brilliant. Best staff member I've ever had. She deserves it all and has the talent for it all, just hasn't started it yet. When she does, she'll be busier than myself.
Yeah, look out.
Yeah, okay. And process-wise, is the process the same designer to architect? Like, is there anything different where you might use a different sort of software, or you've got to go through a different stage? Or
not really. Some architects will produce more documentation and go further into detailing a project, but to say that only architects will do that is wrong. We've got a bit of a niche of how we document and design and take it to a particular level before handing it over to interior designers and leaning on consultants that way. Some architects, but some building designers will do all the interiors themselves as well. So it's really up to the individual how much documentation you want to create. And the whole architect thing really just comes back to that registration.
Yes.
That some people strive for and get and move on with. Other people like me sort of take the easier option and the back door in.
Yep.
It's so interesting, eh?
It's so interesting. And I'm just thinking now, like, as Jayson's at the point of his career now that he's at, and he's obviously earned that, he's done some great work, and he's at the point, mate, at what point do you go, okay, these are really good people, I'm stoked to work with them, but there's some other people here that are happy to pay the dough, but man, this is going to be hard work. How do those conversations go in your own head?
I think everyone in any industry strives to just find those good connections that you want to work with always.
Yep.
And in our game, obviously clients are our number one. I've got a lot of repeat clients, so you become a repeat client because we work well together and you like what I do, but also I like the way you treat me back.
Yeah.
And my business is I've always seen as a bit of a service business. So it's servicing the client as much as design, but you really got to service the client and their needs. If someone wants to come to me with a $400,000 budget, that's absolutely fine. I can design a home to suit a $400,000 budget, and I've always worked that way. But I've never been just because you've got $400,000 to spend, instead of $4 million to spend, that I won't.
Yeah.
I see that just as much of a challenge as the $4 million home, and sometimes even more challenging, knowing that you've got to fit so much in with so little.
Yeah.
And we might not do it as much these days. The fun stuff is the bigger stuff, and you get more notoriety out of it. But there's a happy balance between it all, and I probably get myself into trouble too often by wanting to help good people.
Yeah.
Taking on too many jobs of whatever sort of level because I want to help and I want to service that client. It's probably got me to where I am today because word spreads quickly that he's in it for the right reasons. He wants to help and he wants to do a good job for you. But at the moment, and we're seeing a bit of a slowdown, but we're getting offered more work than we can handle. So you start to pick and choose. And does it come into it that you seem like you'll be easy to deal with, or I've got a recommendation that you are the right sort of person to work with me? Absolutely. You know, it has to.
Has to, yeah.
Just got to get better at saying no.
Yeah, and one slips through the net every now and then, but you try to vet people and do those things because it all sort of it all ends up having to do with your stress levels at the end of the
100%.
project are either sort of better or worse by the working with the right people.
We were saying off air, Jayson, around like, mate, you can always have more. You can always go bigger and bigger, right? But at the end of the day, like what stress and business, that's why you get in a business, to try and get more free time.
Yeah, and it's finding that happy balance.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine who's become my business mentor has a huge company down in Melbourne. He's always spoken to me bigger, 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 but that's his mentality, his business model. I'm a little bit more, which we sort of butt heads with a bit, but I'm a little bit more keep it small and really streamlined and just work with good people and get the numbers right, numbers of projects, but find that happy balance. I've got a 9-month-old, as I said earlier. So that whole work-life balance thing has been more challenging than ever in the last 9 months, especially in this huge wave of property boom we've had. But finding that sort of balance is never easy. I always think we're searching, and we never really know when we're at balance. We always think we've got a little bit too much or not enough.
Yep.
And then I guess the big thing there in that last 9 months, it's staff really stepping up to the plate, which I've got an amazing staff, and so much credit has to go to them for keeping those wheels kind of churning when, you're off for a couple of weeks when you have a baby, you're leaving early to go and help out at home.
Yeah.
And that happens. But without those staff, it all starts to fall down pretty quickly too.
And I was just going to ask you, mate, with the events of 2002 in Bali, I'm assuming it's given you a lot of perspective around life, and I'm a firm believer in that work-life balance as well. Happy to forego a few little business or commercial opportunities to make sure that you only get one crack at spending time with your kids. So, how much of an important role do you think that's played in how you operate now?
Yeah, family and friends become everything. So knowing that it's how much work can you actually take on, but to still be able to give that time back to the other people in your life. I love nothing more than getting out on the golf course. But my wife often tells me that why didn't I take up a hobby that took 1 hour, not 5?
Correct.
But that's that work-life balance once again. And you can't just be home all the time. You can't just be at work all the time. You do need that release. We've got obviously a lot of people are surfers on the Gold Coast. Quick little, sort of mental sort of break for them to get away from, just the stresses of life or work. Golf's my little outlet, and I think we all need that.
And just on the business side as well, like I've noticed you sort of niched down. It seems like you're getting more niche as well with more the higher end kind of stuff, good blue chip sites, really good designs. So how does it work? When did you make the decision, all right, I want to start focusing on these more higher end? Was it just because you were getting that clientele, or was it like, I'm going to be really intentional about it?
I think it was the enjoyment levels. I think I enjoy working on those bigger homes, and I guess I grew up in a really small suburb of Melbourne, sort of humble beginnings kind of thing. Would never have even dreamed stepping foot in some of the houses that I'm designing these days. So I think the enjoyment level of doing that and being able to create those things that I probably never even dreamed of is probably the start point. Once you get a taste for that too, I think you kind of just, the thirst is there, and you do want more and more of them. And that's because obviously you've just got more ideas that you really want to get out there.
Yeah.
And then once again, working with these clients, it's so rewarding. And that's not only the big ones, but the small ones too.
Tell us about a couple of crackers you got coming up, or some things in the pipeline. Srams and I both live down at Palm Beach, and I'll often either ride my bike or cruise past along Jefferson Lane and notice the MacTech build there that you designed, which is, mate, phenomenal. I love the pool, like everything about it. If you go past it, it's phenomenal, Yeah. How was that one, for example, for the listeners? But also, have you got anything coming up that you've been really excited sort of working on?
Yeah, so sort of buddying up with Nick is probably one of the best things I've done in business over the last sort of 2 or 3 years. So that was actually sort of the first project I worked with Nick on.
Right.
And I have to give a lot of credit to Nick, because a lot of the ideas that went into that are from Nick's head too. And it's a real collaborative approach when you end up working with somebody like Nick. I mean, he's built some of the coast's best homes.
Yeah.
So it's almost, my design brain, but his kind of knowledge of what he's done in the past, and bringing all that together creates projects like that. It's not just me saying, especially to someone like Nick, you should do it this way. It's a collaborative thing. So absolute stunner there. Talking of Palm Beach, we've got one kicking off absolute beachfront. So it's actually a Gold Coast Highway address, but sort of battle axe down to the block, which is going to be a basement and 4 levels.
Wow.
So that'll be probably the tallest home I've done.
Wow.
And probably will kick off in the next sort of let's call it 3 to 4 months, just being it should maybe 1 to 2, but let's just say 3 to 4 in this current climate. It's an exciting one called Pearl at Palm Beach. Seamus Cameron looks like he'll be building that one.
Okay,
who's another really sort of high profile builder on the coast. Dahlia Estate is another home that's just being completed. It's got a really cool story behind it, which I'll run through if you want me to.
Yeah. If you get on Jace's page and look at Dahlia Estate, in Talabudra, isn't it?
In Talabudra Valley.
Thumper.
So it gives us an insight into that build. So the crazy thing was 10 years ago, a client called me to come and have a look at their block of land, and I turned up, and I honestly to this day I've never seen a more beautiful block of land. It just had a presence about it, I have to say. These clients actually had gone through a home I designed in Talabudra Valley that became a Yorktown prize home.
Right.
But my initial concept to them was quite crazy for their block, because I truly thought that it suited their block, yet they wanted to kind of go down the path of almost having their own version of this Yorktown prize home, which I didn't think suited the block. Fast forward sort of 6 months, they'd pushed me further and further into getting their own little version of that home. Unfortunately, I wasn't on board as much as I probably wish I could have been, knowing that I thought the site deserved more. Fast forward another couple of years, I used to get onto Google Earth and check if anything had started or, any groundworks had been done. Because I always thought about that particular site. Nothing ever happened. Unfortunately for those clients, I think they ended up divorcing and needing to sell the site. And this was probably, fast forwarding quite a way. And the only way I found out, I got a couple of phone calls from prospective buyers saying that they were going to the auction of this site. And that a set of my plans was sort of attached to the information. And just asking my thoughts on it. Just so happened after the auction, I got a phone call from Ross and Ash, who bought the site. Ross being from Hankin, the building company. And he wanted to see what my thoughts were. And the initial phone call was an interesting one, because although he had the plans of what these clients wanted to build, he never wanted to build it, and he didn't let me know that. But being the honest and transparent person that I am, I said to him, I'd love to get you in and show you what I truly thought was deserving of the site. And that initial meeting, I sat down, pulled out the original concept, and sort of rest is history. We were all on the same page that was more deserving of the site than the other. And quite quickly, actually, crazily enough, with a design like that, because you'd think that something like that could take years to kind of fine-tune. We were off and away within probably a 3-month period, and Ross's build time and quality was just absolutely exceptional.
That's such a good lesson, isn't it? Like, Jace is like stuck to what his core values and true beliefs are in. That wasn't the right home for the site. He was actually just delivering to the client what they wanted. Client changes, wants the actual advice from Jayson, not what was actually put forward before. And it didn't say it to each other, but you're actually really aligned. So therefore, built trust with Jayson, and now you've obviously got a client for life.
Absolutely, yeah, and already sort of looking for what's next.
And
it probably shows, or it's probably a good cross section of how my business works. I'll always advise and direct a client, but I'll always give in to the client's absolute sort of musts and requests too. Their home, if that client wanted to build that home, absolutely, I will do the best job that you will allow me to do, and I'll guide you into that spot as good as I can. Give me complete freedom, and I'll show you something completely different. And I have clients from all, everywhere in between, sort of those two stances, I guess.
I was just on the design thing. So you get inspiration. Do you just get how does it work? You go on a pad and a pen first, or are you
I'm a little bit different. Yeah, I'm computer only. And the funny thing is, talking of that uni versus sort of TAFE qualification, the uni kids still use yellow trace and will sketch everything over the top of each other.
That's what I thought.
I've never done it. I wasn't trained that way. So straight on the computer, straight to sort of floor plans and starting to create. It's a real digital creation for me rather than that kind of hand sketch.
Do you, and this is very basic levels, you probably laugh at me, but do you look at the site and go, okay, well, that's your northeast aspect, so we've got to make sure we have open entertaining area there, plenty of natural light. Like, is that a bit of a starting point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Starting point is orientation's everything.
Yep.
Good point.
When
I say growing up on the coast, through those late teen years and so on, you really learn, south to water homes can be quite cold and, in shade a lot of the day. We know why, we as Gold Coasters know why north to water sells so much better than south to water. But it's because it's very important. So, we often go to sites and they're south to water, and we need to make sure that the client understands the compromises that would come from putting their pool area, on that south side of a double-storey home.
Yep.
They might choose to put it into the north corner, but there's a compromise to that from where al fresco and entertaining is, and does that have a connection to a pool that's on the opposite side of the home? They're the difficulties we kind of deal with day in, day out. But when I say difficulties, there's nothing difficult about it. It's relaying the information to the client to ensure that they can make the decision on where they want their pool, knowing the sort of pros and cons to both.
You're just giving the professional advice kind of thing, yeah. What would be your 3 blanket rules you think, all right, new site, new job, like what are you looking at, and what's your kind of, how are you piecing it together, like from a high level? What's the 3 most important things?
So obviously site orientation would be right up there. Client's budget is probably number one to me always, and I think that a lot of people in my position don't take that as sort of the paramount concern. So budget for sure, site orientation, and then I suppose sort of design style and wish list is always big to us. We want clients to come to us with and giving us an understanding of what they truly want in a home. A lot of the time wish lists are a whole lot bigger than budget might be, but having sort of some hard conversations early is really important in making sure that we're kind of always moving forward. There's no use sort of allowing a client to dream that their wish list might suit their budget, designing them the home that is $1 million over, and then everyone being disappointed and having to come back to square one from there. So I think it's probably not even like, 3 main things. It's really just being really transparent with where the client sits, what you believe you can create with that budget on that site, and then moving forward from there.
And what's next for you, mate? You obviously got a 9-month-old. Is there plans for more kids? Like, what's happening with as far as the business goes? Yeah. Actually, one thing we didn't touch on is you've also got another side business in sort of that house and land space, which kind of ticks along for you, I'm sure. But where do you see yourself over the next sort of 5 to 10 years? What's the plan?
I think it'd just be consolidating, really. I'm not, as I said earlier, it's not about getting bigger and better. It's probably about getting better, but better in a more streamlined sort of sense, and just consolidating what we've created. And I say we because like one of my staff members is probably nearly coming up to being with me for a decade now.
Wow.
So it is a collaborative approach in my office, and I sort of want to grow that more so. And really just kind of, really consolidate where we are in the market and just keep producing the sort of, the quality of home we do for the clients we have. It's certainly not about ruling the world or taking, it's anything but that. If anything, getting that streamline right, so maybe a game of golf once a week can fit in there, and time with the family, all of those things, right? It's certainly about finding a bit more of a balance. And does that come back to, Bali and knowing that you don't know how long you've got left, but I'd hate to think that I've just worked all my life, 16-hour days, which I have done for a long time, but aren't doing anymore. I don't want to go back to that. Finding that balance is probably key.
Yeah, definitely. Mate, you didn't answer the more kids bit. What's going on there?
Oh, look, we will if we can. It's,
see how you go. Yeah.
Fun part's trying, right?
Yeah.
Mate, it's
correct.
Yeah. Mate, so I put a little Q&A out last night. I'll just quickly, we got just before we wrap up, a few people just asked, all right, firstly, what's your take on the Gold Coast market moving forward 2022?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I think we'd all agree that we are seeing some sort of slowdown. I think you'd have to have your head in the sand if you didn't believe that interest rates and these things are affecting things in some way.
Yep.
I think that early this year we were probably getting 10 job requests a week, and only really being able to take on a couple of those. I think that those numbers are probably down to sort of 4 or 5 at the moment. So my gut says, and, just from the phone slowing a bit, we're in for a little bit of a slower time. Our industry, I think majority of people in it would actually welcome it to some degree. It's been nuts. It's been a crazy 2 years, but I think a slowdown is okay to us.
Yep.
No one wants to get quiet, but I think it is slowing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Someone asks, where do you seek inspiration from? Like what? Like is it countries or
no? Not
portfolios?
So much countries. A lot of our clients bring us their own inspiration because we design to a client's brief. It's really we'll never tell a client that they need to build a Hamptons home or a coastal home or something. They will bring us a lot of inspo. Personally, I'm Instagram is huge in our world at the moment. So I'd follow 1,000 Instagram pages of inspo. So sort of somewhere in my subconscious is a lot of that, a lot of those ideas. And I guess coupling that up with then the client's inspiration picks that they bring us is probably that starting point.
And mate, just lastly, what trend do you think is slowly coming to fruition? Obviously, mate.
What's the next big trend?
What's the next big trend in your opinion? Yeah.
Well, I think that the biggest trend hitting, and it's probably already hitting, is this modern Mediterranean sort of style.
Is that the curves?
Curves and arches are back in a big way. Hamptons is obviously gone. When I say gone, we're still doing the odd Hamptons home. People love them. They're a beautiful traditional home.
Yeah.
Done well, they'll always be timeless. But everyone's moving into this sort of more Mediterranean style. Go back 15 years, every arch that we ever found was being pulled out.
Yeah, squared off.
It's crazy, eh?
No one wanted an arch, now everyone wants an arch. We did a home probably 5 or 6 years ago, beautiful single-story home with some curves. Curves weren't being used at the time. I still look at it, it's probably one of the most beautiful single-story homes we've ever done. Curves came back. Will curves go out? Absolutely. I explain to clients that I believe, design trends are just like fashion. Yeah. Stonewashed jeans or tie-dye T-shirts, I actually saw someone on TV just the other day wearing a tie-dye T-shirt and thought, are we really going back there? It's probably like arches to a lot of people.
Yeah. It's interesting, eh? It's really cool to hear it from the horses out. Things come and go and, you just – would you say it's up to the client? Like, do they sort of say, hey, I like this, and you'll sort of just try and create it? Yeah.
Client direction is paramount because there's no use giving a client a Hamptons home when they want, a modern sort of, square box. It has to suit the client. Like we're working with Matt and Emma on their next sort of project too at the moment. So Spanish influence is sort of there. They've actually flown over to Spain. I'm sure they'll bring a whole lot of ideas back.
Yeah.
So it's really working with the client. And I guess in business, I've always tried to ensure that I'm not pigeonholed to be a particular style of designer.
I like that.
Where there are some who are known for what they do. So be it. But what happens when that trend's out? And, I get it when the trend's in, but you certainly want to have another string to your bow when that trend's out. And so we try to keep it sort of, keep it quite different from time to time.
Yeah.
Love it.
One thing I've taken out of today's Shrams is that there's still hope for me to become a designer or something.
Oh, mate.
I look at Jayson, I think, mate, we're so similar. We're just blokes doing our best. And difference is this guy's designing multi-million-dollar homes.
Let's get the Microsoft Paint back out.
Off we go. What are we doing this Saab, Jason?
Training course at my place.
There we go.
It's funny, mate. Because the amount of open homes I get to, and I'm always looking for clients and stuff, and you just hear the chatter of people going in. And mate, everyone's an expert, right?
Yes.
They all got. I would never put that arch.
Of course. Yeah, that's right.
It's a funny one. So today's F's going to add a ton of value, and mate, just want to acknowledge obviously a bit of the backstory, mate. That's unreal. It's really good, just from a personal resilience and business. Looking blanket business, pulling out on your own. You had a skill set. didn't need to follow the trend and get the degrees and things like that. That's going to add a ton, because a lot of people think, you know, you got to have this 6-year degrees to be a professional and be in demand as a service. So I just got to acknowledge that. But then again, also finding your niche now and really capitalizing on the trends and client. I got a lot, even for myself in business, is at the end of the day that you got to fit with a client. It's got to be fit both sides, right? The people who just fall at their knees to a client aren't living to their truest values and their skill set, right?
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, mate, just want to thank you so much for that. What do you reckon? We hit him with a quick fast five.
He looks nervous. Look at him. He's saying, what's going on here?
He's bringing him back to his AFL. What position were you, by the way? I'd say
I've played all over the field.
On the forward, surely.
Forward pocket, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say
towards the end.
He's very adaptable. So
mate.
Business, footy, he
I
does
could
it all.
just see him at the front waving his hair, just lob one over, get up, specky over him, mate. First thing that comes to mind: any location, any dwelling type. All right. So where would the holiday home be? Anywhere in the world?
For myself, anywhere in the world. Probably somewhere on a beach in Italy.
Italy. Jeez, everyone is blowing up. Everyone's there at the moment.
Last few weeks, yeah.
Oh, what you reckon? Like a villa and a Malfi, or like?
Yeah, I'd take that.
A villa.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd go the Archers, or?
Why not?
Yeah.
When in Rome.
Jayson Pate Design.
What about blue chip? All right, you got some surplus, some cash. Where you putting it for just the set and forget investment in anywhere in the world, dwelling type, whereabouts?
Ooh. I'll say the Gold Coast, why not?
Yeah.
We've got a booming market. We've got the southern migration happening. Can't beat us at the moment.
Good yields as well.
Absolutely.
Crazy yields for what you can get.
It's wild.
Yeah. What any sort of dwelling type in particular?
Look, we do work with investors from time to time, and I do some development on the side of the design game. So I'd say sort of multi-res. I think there's good money in it if you can find the right site and sort of up density. So
like a pack of townhouses kind of thing, you mean?
Yep. Even just a couple of villas.
Yep.
I did a triplex in Broadbeach that was a successful development. You find the right site and get the right designer on board who can obviously maximise that.
Yep.
As an investment strategy, I think you can't beat that.
Good point there.
Agreed.
Maximising. Again, it comes down, location does 80% of the heavy lifting, right? You need to find, I hear the word, site, orientation. Can't change the dirt, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can't change.
What about the party destination, party home, anywhere in the world? Bucks party.
Geez, that's a difficult one. I haven't partied for a long time now. Let's go Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Well,
can't beat it.
Jayson Pate penthouse. And mate, lastly, what about where do you think the forever home's gonna be?
I always said Monaco Street, north to water.
Yep.
Jeez. North. So yeah, you'd be at the northern end of because when it curves,
the dog park there.
Yeah.
There's Sunland just had some absolutely brilliant sites there that obviously were sold off.
Yes.
If I was 5 years ahead of now and maybe had a little bit more money in the pocket, maybe that would have been one of the sites. Who knows? But I'm not a huge beach person. I'm not a huge boat person either, but I love that north to water aspect. I've lived in Broadbeach for a long time now. Got a little dog, so probably north to water with the dog park across the road suits me down to the ground.
Yep.
Monaco, it's got a good vibe there. Yeah, I remember when I looked at first ones for clients on Monaco Street, and I was just blown away. It's just one little hidden pocket. Hey,
that's just beautiful.
You can't really see it from the road, but it's unreal.
Gorgeous.
And mate, lastly, what's one piece of advice you could give to, I guess, buyers out in the marketplace?
Buyers out in the marketplace. I think just do your research. Understand the market, know what a property's worth and what a suburb, might be worth. Pick your little pockets. I look at realestate.com every day for my next sort of development opportunity. So I think it's actually just learning. Don't dive into something you don't know, or make contact with people who do know, because, as we said, location's everything, but purchase price is everything too. If you're trying 100%. To make money, location's one thing, but if you don't buy right, the development doesn't stack up straight away.
You say it all the time, mate, don't you?
Oh, mate, you make your money on the way in. That's
Absolutely.
It,
and you look at Ruin X, a lot of the money was made on the way in. It was a really good buy.
Yep.
A lot of money was made by a good design and well executed sort of finish. But had they not have bought so well, they wouldn't have been in that position either.
That's a great point, because we spoke about one at Palm Beach that we saw that was a really good renovation, like terrific. I looked at it and thought, this is beautiful. And then I found out the sale price during the week. Shram sent me a text and I went, wow, geez, there wasn't much money in that for them because they didn't buy well. But they didn't get, in my opinion, didn't get what they deserved, because I thought the renovation was outstanding. But anyway, that's what happens if you don't buy well, right?
100%. Well, thanks again, Jayson, mate. That was unreal. Really inspiring as well, I feel. And Instagrams, you got a website and that. Where can people find out?
I think most people find us on Instagram these days. So it's just the handle sort of at Jayson Pate Design. Head on there and you'll see all our sort of most recent works, and you can obviously contact me through there, or website's just Jayson Pate Design, and there's email forms from there too.
Awesome.
And training's at your place at 3 o'clock. So we'll see you soon.
Got a couple of budding architects on my hands.
Thanks for coming in, mate. It's been
thanks,
great.
Jayson.
Okay, thanks for having me.